So I feel like we're slowly going to start kind of delegating our work to AI agents that will be at both at the individual level and at the company level. So the individuals will be like, hey, I want to delegate this job that I'm doing. The company will be like, I usually hire 30 people to get this entire process done. I'm going to automate this entire process. And that will go from 10% now to 50% by the end of next year. And then I think there still is going to be the last 20%, which humans are going to stick to. And so even 3 years down the line, I feel like it'll be 80-20, 80 AI, 20 human.
Welcome to the Imagine AI Live podcast. I'm your host, Chris Madden, and today we have with us Bindu Reddy. Bindu is the CEO and co-founder of Abacus.AI, one of the hottest AI companies out there today. So happy to have you on the Imagine AI Live podcast. Bindu, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Chris, for having me on, and excited for Imagine AI.
We're so glad to be partnered with you and have had you at the conference, and I'm so happy to finally have you on the podcast. I've wanted to talk to you for a while. So first, I'd like to give our audience a picture of what Abacus.AI is. What is Abacus?
So Abacus.AI is an AI company that makes the world's first AI super assistant. So we like calling ourselves AI super assistant. And just to tell you what that means is, we don't believe that consumers or even professionals will end up having 10 or 15 AI subscriptions. Already, people don't want to go buy Cursor and, ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and so on and so forth. We think that it makes a lot of sense to have one AI tool which gets all your work done. Right now, of course, AI doesn't do everything. It does a bit of everything, but it doesn't do all of everything. And what the AI super assistant does today, which Abacus.AI offers for professionals, is called Chat LLM. So what Chat LLM does, it helps you kind of accelerate your work, accelerate your day-to-day AI needs by basically giving you access to all the large language models, a whole bunch of state-of-the-art video generators, as well as image generators. And then we have something which is really quite exciting called Deep Agent, which is part of this Chat LLM, which actually tries to automate work. So you can actually give it tasks like go create a PowerPoint, go create an Excel spreadsheet, go create a website, and it can do that. Over time, we kind of believe this will morph into AGI because it'll start doing more and more complex tasks, and it'll do it more and more autonomously. So that's in a nutshell what Abacus does.
That's incredible. So it's almost like a Swiss Army knife of AI tools. So is it all APIs that you have directly with all the top LLMs and the video generation and the image generation?
Yeah. So it basically is, I would say, 4 different things. One part is the APIs. So we do work with various different providers, about 25 or 26. We believe in really getting the state-of-the-art models, regardless of whether they're from some small startup. For example, we have LipSync from Hedra. We have, of course, O3 from OpenAI, or, video from Kling, which we think is a really great video model. So there is that layer, which is, let's call that the API layer. On top of it, there is the tooling layer. And this we think is really important, right? What we mean by that is tools which will enable the AI to get things done. So things like web search is a really simple tool. So web search, code execution, under RAG is a tool where you can actually store data and get the data that is relevant for the LLM. Basically doing permissioned RAG. So doing something more complex where you can get the data from your enterprise systems, understand that data, and then give it to an LLM. And then there are tools like computer use. So you see things like the LLM browsing the web, sometimes going to different paths. That's another tool. So Abacus has built out, I would say, about 2 or 3 dozen of those tools. Combine that with the APIs, and then combine that with enterprise security and compliance and permissioning and user accounts and roles to basically bring together this AI super assistant. It's actually a really complex problem because we're looking at all your enterprise data. So we have a version of this for enterprises, which means that we can connect to Salesforce, G Drive, SharePoint, understand that data, understand your enterprise permissions, and create the super assistant for each of your employees.
Incredible. And how big is Abacus.AI today?
In terms of people, we're, I think, about 150 people. So yeah, quite a big team, relatively speaking, in the AI world especially. And we have a pretty large team of engineers. And we do have a bunch of these tools really bundled together well. One of the reasons why we have a really, gotten a lot of traction lately is it's a one-stop shop for all things. So we do have a code editor, much like Cursor, right? It's called Code LLM. It's growing up. I wouldn't say it's as good as Cursor, to be honest, but it's actually getting very good. It'll get much better. We think of that as our desktop super assistant. And it will actually layer on things like MCP, connecting to different APIs and so on. So we have that code editor. We have the chat LLM piece, and then we have the enterprise piece. Yes, combined together, we're like about 150 people.
What's been your latest valuation, if that's publicly known?
Let's say we're approaching unicorn status. We've gotten a lot of interest. So we're still relatively small, if you think about it, compared to like some of the, what I'm going to call overvalued AI companies. We like that. We don't disclose our revenue, but it's very, very substantial. And we've been growing tremendously off late. So we're very excited.
And so what was your background prior to this? I know you worked at Google, you worked at AWS. Can you talk to us about those bigger companies you worked at and what you learned?
Yeah. So before this, I worked at Amazon, and before that, I was at Google too. I would say, now I'm sure things are getting a little different than they were before, but not as much as you would think, because AI hasn't really, I think, penetrated these large companies as much as it could have. Having said that, the main thing I learned is not to work in one. I mean, if you can afford it, like if you have the luxury of not being able to work in a very large corporation, I think it's a luxury which is very well worth taking. Part of the reason is, look, it makes you a lot of money, no doubt about it. It's also puts you in front of a lot of very, really smart people. So these companies have very smart people. They have a lot of great tools. They pay you a lot of money. So there are all these great things about them. But at the same time, it actually doesn't give you that much independence. So there is a little less autonomy. There is a little less ability to ship things. There's a lot more layers of management that you have to navigate. And this is after being, I would say, one of those managers. So I feel like the future is actually going to be smaller companies, more agile companies. And we're seeing that already. Some of that takes shape. It also depends on how the AI space progresses, right? If it progresses to be much more decentralized and if there is open source AI, I think we're going to do really well. And we're not going to have to deal with extremely large, extremely monopolistic corporations. And so I think the main thing I learned there is look, life is pretty good and you can succeed. And it is a great place if you want something which is low risk, but it's great fun not working in a large company as well, if you have the luxury, like I said.
I feel the same way with having your own thing that you're working on, you're building. It is a great feeling to have that ownership and the steering your ship and being able to ship things.
If you work for a small company too, I'm not anti that, right? Not everybody can be a founder. So yeah.
Yes, that's true. Let's go back even further. So you were born in India and you went to Indian Institute of Technology, which is just north of Mumbai. I was looking at a map of it earlier. And tell us about your origin story growing up, what you wanted to be when you were young and getting into the IIT and then what you did after that, when you came to America.
I guess I grew up in actually a fairly large city in India called Bangalore. It's now called Bengaluru. But still, I would say it wasn't kosher for women to move out of their hometown or their home city and go to a different city and do engineering and that sort of thing. So I think the first kind of interesting thing that I did in my life was to actually move out of my hometown and actually go to a different city, which is Mumbai, to do my engineering. I happened to be in a place which had 99.9% men. So, it was really difficult, or rather it wasn't really normal for women, like I said, to travel out of their hometown, but it was also an engineering school, which had a lot of hoops that you had to jump through. So there were very few women. So it was a very interesting experience for me to actually go to that school, go to college there. But it's also, I met a lot of really interesting people. I met my husband there and all my best friends are from there. And so it's a very kind of great experience where you go to college. And I think that is true for everyone, actually, where you go to college really shapes you. And then I think part of the reason I'm here in the US is actually kind of how I felt about women in India, actually, very honestly. I felt and I hadn't obviously experienced any kind of how it is in the first world, so to speak, how to actually be an entrepreneur, a female entrepreneur, and so on. But I felt India was very stifling in some sense. It was also very close, and it has changed a lot over the last few years, of course. And one of the big reasons for me to travel here was hey, I would love to, go to some place where it's much more liberal, where women can actually do things. When I did move, I came to Dartmouth, which is a really great school as well. And from then on, I think I really adjusted quite well here. And my initial dream was actually to do genetic engineering. I'm a little sad that I didn't pursue that. I did for some time until I realized it was too early. And what I mean by genetic, it's not even a profession now, I think. It's kind of actually modifying your genes to be able to optimize for different traits and things like that. So how do you cure disease by modifying your inherent genetic data? I think now it's kind of bioinformatics, but quickly realized There's no such thing. That's like sci-fi. It still is to some extent. So moved on to more to the conventional traditional software and came to Silicon Valley. The internet boom was going on about almost in early 2000s. Participated in that in a big way in a company, right, which is now called Upwork. I think I was one of the first few employees. It was called Elance then. Very good friends with the founders. Pretty much started a lot of their initial like engineering divisions as well. And then did a bunch of engineering, moved on to do more product. And now I'm an entrepreneur. And then, of course, the rest happened.
How did you get the job at Google? What was the process there? And was it a stroke of good luck or did you formally apply?
Yeah, no, I formally applied. Yes, I formally applied. I mean, I don't know. It seems like right before the Google job was kind of interesting to get. It was still small, right? Like 2 grand, 3 grand people. Now it seems like a huge, like Cisco style campus. So I would not recommend, I honestly would not recommend Google to anybody anymore because just again, it's like a really large company, 100,000 people, 200,000 people. You're not learning much. I've heard people don't even have, don't write that much code anyway. So, and then we don't hire from Google anymore because it's so bad. So sorry to have such a negative view, but yeah, at that time, though, I was super excited. I was like, this is the coolest thing since sliced bread. So I did apply and I thought that they were very interesting because at that time they had this 20% project thing where you could spend 20% of time doing whatever you wanted. So I thought that was super, super exciting. And yeah, I just applied.
How about Amazon, the differences between Google's culture and Amazon's culture?
Yeah, I think Google really looked for and still potentially looks for kind of outlier talent and then kind of leaves most of the execution to the wind almost, meaning, just figure it out as you go. Part of the reason why, if you see things like Gmail, you see that they haven't changed anything for the last 20 years. I mean, they still have 300 engineers on Gmail and nothing happens. As an example of how Google operates. Now, lately in the last 2-3 years, they're in code red phase, right? Because they have an existential crisis because of ChatGPT. So they're really mobilized. I also think lately they've gotten a lot of founder attention. So we've got Sergey really coming back and looking at stuff and making sure things are working. So I think Google's coming back to be a little bit of itself from before. But still, I would say the brightest people in the world work at Google even today. But you put a bunch of bright people together and then don't give them too much direction or, don't have like proper execution procedures almost or processes. I think you'll end up creating more chaos than not. And I think that is kind of how I think about Google. They're really smart people, but a lot of smart people are very frustrated. They make a ton of money, so they don't want to leave and they continue to stay there. And that's fine by them, right? Because one of the goals that they have is to make sure that a really lot of smart people stay inside and don't necessarily go out. Amazon is the exact opposite. They can't afford to have a lot of smart people. I mean, they can't pay as much as Google. So they are very much process oriented in some sense in terms of making execution work, getting stuff done and so on. So the culture is very different. It's very much focused on pushing stuff to production, shipping stuff and so on. But sadly, in their case, they were doing really well till before the AI boom started, if you think about it. And, AWS was the top cloud. It still is. And it was really a big infrastructure company. If you think about computer science, cloud matters, right? Where you actually host your data, where you store, compute, everything matters. Amazon was number one. On the flip side, they never hired a lot of brilliant people. So they didn't have a big AI team. And now we're seeing that rebalancing happen. So I'd say two very, very different companies. And you learn quite a bit from both of them.
In between the time at Amazon and starting Abacus.AI, you started another company. That's correct, right?
No, it's the same. It's Abacus.AI. We just renamed it. It used to be called Reality Engines. Somebody called Reality.ai had a fit and said, hey, you cannot use Reality Engines. So we were like, okay, fine.
Let's go to the founding moment of Abacus.AI. Talk about your co-founders, the original idea, the aha moment, and why you started Abacus.
Like I said, I was at Amazon before this. I was really excited about what we were building there, actually, or the vision that I think I had, which was like, hey, let's go try to see if we can build AI. And that was really early. That was in 2017. So if you think about that time, there was no large language models. And the idea was to see how you can build AI systems, which in turn can build other AI models, like forecasting models, regression models, so more tabular data models, right? And then at Amazon, we started something called AI verticals to solve that particular problem. And then we realized pretty quickly that the approach that Amazon was taking was too verticalized. It didn't have some general components to it. So when I think about artificial general intelligence, I think about something which is like actually generally applicable. So if you become too specific and too vertical, then you're not really building something where AI is building AI, or where it's something where it can actually do hard things, right? Like if I say go build a PowerPoint or go build a Word doc or an app, it should do as well as building a custom application which builds a PowerPoint or an app. And we weren't taking that approach. So the idea behind Abacus was to say, hey, can you build an AI platform where you can actually build AI automatically, where you don't necessarily need the human in the loop, where you don't need like 5 data scientists to do it? So the idea was, I think, a little bit ahead of its time when we first started, which was 2019. We built a very strong, very good platform, which had a lot of the tools that I'm talking about right now, like the code execution, data transformation, connectors, permissions at scale, vector stores, you name it. So we built a lot of that out. And then luckily, we didn't invent it, but somebody else did. And there was that ChatGPT moment, right? LLMs were invented. And suddenly that vision started to become a lot more real. This idea of AI building AI. And now we can say, hey, AI can build software systems. And so in some ways, our original idea was kind of like a little early. Now it feels right on time. And the aha moment was like, okay, wait, this can be automated. I always knew it will be sooner or later, but now it is happening.
For your company now, it seems like you have like kind of a buy once and you get all this stuff. How does the pricing model work? Is enterprise your main customers? Do you have small and medium-sized businesses? Like people go and they can choose one package, or what? How does that work?
Both of them give you access to the super assistant, is what we call it, which is basically come to us if you want to like use AI in your day job. It's as simple as that, right? And so we have two packages, professionals and enterprises, and that's it. So that's the two choices. If you're a professional, it starts as low as $10 a month. Really simple, really straightforward. You pay $10, you get started, you get access to our whole array of tools. You start using those tools. There's another pro tier which you can upgrade to. You can also buy more compute points. So it's really simple. The more you use it, the more you have to pay. It's much cheaper than a ChatGPT or a Gemini or whatever else. And you get access to a whole bunch of these models, but you also get access to a whole bunch of these tools, as well as things like agent creation, custom chatbots. Again, whatever you want, you actually can get it done. Where we haven't gone yet is, say something which is very specific, like HeyGen, which is like a video creation engine, right? Can we do as well as HeyGen today? No, we're getting there though. My whole point of view is, look, if it is AI, then it should be able to do it anyway. Like it's not us, it's mostly AI building this thing, right? It's not me having to go build these things. So this is why I find the current startup kind of like explosion, so to speak, a little weird, because if you look at OpenAI and Google, they agree with us. They have the everything apps, if you think about it. Like today, Google I/O revealed pretty much stuff with coding agents, video, images, LLMs, exactly what I'm talking about, right? So why would I want to go elsewhere if AI can actually do what I want to get done in one kind of interface, in one kind of like platform? So that's the goal. If you're an enterprise, we have a different package because enterprises need a little bit more hand-holding. So they go down that path. That actually has a free POC. So we give them a free pilot. We handhold them. We make sure that we pass security and that sort of thing. So it's very simple. Pick one or the other and, use us as this one-stop shop. Now, why should they use Abacus as opposed to Google? Well, hell, do you not want O3? You use Google, you don't get O3. Use Google, you don't get Claude. You use Google, you don't get Kling. It's pretty much a very bad idea as any normal individual to basically tie yourself to one company, which is the fundamental AI model provider.
That's what I fear for a lot of these startups, AI startups, is that they're just the bigger dogs are going to start implementing what they're building.
Yeah. Today you had Jules. They announced something called Jules, which is a coding agent. Now, every company, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and I bet you Meta will do it. I bet you Amazon will do it. Will have some version of the coding agent, right? Now, does this mean that Cursor is going to die? Probably not, because Cursor is good, really good, and they have a head start. But any other coding agent will. Like maybe Cursor will survive, but any other competitor of Cursor won't. In fact, we already saw that. One down, Surf just got bought, right? And so I think all of these kind of like, hey, I'm doing this one little thing and this one narrow thing, and it's just going to make it. I don't think so. It won't. Maybe if it's so specialized and so different that the big guys won't go after you, and it does have a market which is big enough, it survives. But I think this idea that, hey, I'm going to do like a marketing agent, that's not going to work out, I think.
Yeah, or access to some proprietary data that other people don't have. But I think as the enterprise, you're choosing which company you're giving access to your proprietary data. I'm just a little confused. Like, how do you stay competitive then against these big dogs? Like, you're this, like, gruffy, medium sized dog.
Yeah. And like, let's say small dog. Let's say we're a fully agile one. I think there are three ways, right? One, as I just said, there is no one big dog which is going to get access to every good model, right? Like, I doubt, I mean, maybe they will, but Google won't turn around and be like, hey, let's offer Kling, right? Which is a Chinese model. So that's one thing. They offer their own stack as opposed to offering various different stacks. That's part one, though. Part two, I think, is how good your like actual general tools are. I mean, we just talked about whether the tooling is actually like doing the right things, whether you can actually like take Google Cloud today. It's not that easy to make an application work using Google Cloud. I mean, they have all the pieces, but it's not the infrastructure, et cetera. It takes time to set up this configuration. People will talk about how hard the APIs are. So it has to be really intuitive, really simple, really easy to use. So yeah, they check the boxes, but how easy and how intuitive and how simple are they? So the first one is like, they don't have all the for sure, Google will never have OpenAI. Large language models, unless, again, the world changes and everybody has everything. That's one piece. And I think that's a big advantage. The second piece is, like I said, how intuitive and how well put together it is. Now, here's the issue. If you have 5,000 people working on something, by definition, it's not going to be well put together. Like, you're going to have Firebase Studio, you're going to have Notebook LLM, you're going to have, Google Whisk, you're going to have Google Wave, and you're going to have Google Gemini, and you're going to have Autopilot. This is their current configuration. I mean, I challenge you, short of me, nobody probably knows the list of things that Google offers today. And it'll offer 20 more because everybody in Google will want to work on some AI product or the other. So it's a mess, in other words. And so if you want to go there, you're going to have to deal with that. The organization chart is revealed in the product. So I think that's a very big advantage in the AI world, because AI, you can't be bothered to know about these products at some level. And I think that's huge. And the third one is just speed, right? How fast can we move compared to how fast a large company moves? Google ships stuff, but they ship stuff into experimental. Even to date, they don't have Gemini 2.5 in production. There's no GA. I mean, I hope they go faster so that they're competitive. But I think small companies do have that advantage a little bit. So I think if we combine those three alongside kind of the white glove experience we provide to our customers, especially our enterprises, I think it's a pretty compelling, value prop. I feel like a company like Perplexity has a very similar value prop if you look at it. So there's not just us in that lane. There are a few companies in that lane.
Let's paint the picture of what it's like using Abacus a little bit more. So you're given all these options of different LLMs you can use, different AI tools. It's on you to choose which one. I mean, are you making suggestions, or how does it work?
If you just sign up, we have something called Route LLM, which is your default. It's like GPT-5 in a sense. What we mean by that is, like, based on your prompt, you have to go to the right LLM. So technically, most of the techies know this already. Sonnet or Gemini does really well for code. And the thinking models are only necessary when you have hard problems. So sending a very simple prompt to a thinking model is a very big, huge waste of time and money, right? Gemini Flash is very good at summarization. So Route is our own proprietary technology, which actually does reinforcement learning to learn what is the best model to send to based on the prompt. So you don't have to do anything. You just literally, it's like ChatGPT, but with all the AIs in it. So ChatGPT on steroids.
When did you start implementing all of the the image generation, the video generation tools into your product?
Those are easy to do. Honestly, it takes 3 hours to do something like this because we're just pulling the APIs, right? So that's easy. But integrating it into one ChatGPT-like experience across the different APIs, that is slightly harder, but that's more like a 1 week thing. Then the Route LLM, which is kind of learning from the data and understanding where to send what as the LLMs actually evolve over time, that's a little harder.
And so you just update the API code, or when these new products are released?
Yeah, you have to learn. We update it. We have to understand. We also run a very famous benchmark called LiveBench. So people will amp everything up, right? Everybody releases their LLM and say that they're the best at everything, clearly. I mean, today, again, Germany said, hey, we're really beating everybody everywhere. So, I mean, that's what they'll say. So then we actually have a really famous benchmark called LiveBench.ai, where we actually evaluate these LLMs on hidden questions, like questions that are not published. So we know for sure whether they're good or bad across different categories. So we have different categories like math, reasoning, language, instruction following, coding, agentic. And then we can actually rate them and rank them, and we know for sure which LLM is good at what. We use that information alongside what our users prefer. We actually see which LLM makes sense in which context and then use that. So in some ways, it's learning based on, how well particular LLM answers a particular type of question.
The question, I feel like a big problem that people have with LLMs today is the data control, and especially switching in between a bunch of different LLMs. Now AI can remember your story and like what you're building about you, but then it doesn't transfer to the other LLM. How does that work within Abacus? Like, how do you do data protection and memory?
So first off, we make it all our agreements with all the big providers don't allow for training based on this. So enterprises don't like that. So we make sure that that is the case, right? So we make sure that data is not kind of leaking through these enterprises. Second, a lot of times we actually use what are called RAG-based systems, which is basically storing the data in what is a vector store. So we don't necessarily give the LLM all the data all the time. And then you also can have memory in itself is very simple, which is if you wanted to just store hey, what is the user's preferences? That's more like a simpler kind of thing where you just basically say, hey, this is what the user really likes to do. Like they like cycling maybe, or these are their preferences. And you use that and inform the LLM to kind of nudge the LLM in the right direction.
Notebook LM, do you have a version of that? Do you have that where you can just store this is all my company's data, this is the project I'm working on, all the details, here's my life story, you put it into one place?
We have something called projects. Now, if you go through, I haven't actually used Notebook LM too much, but it's the equivalent of something called projects, which ChatGPT has, for example, right? So which is like your projects. It's exactly like that. Here's all my stuff. Here's my folders. Here's a project around my podcast work, or here's a project around my, hiking because I'm into hiking. And then you can ask questions in that project and you can have custom instructions. And so, yes, all of these products, I think now there are probably 100 though. 100 of these products have similar features.
Let's talk about your Deep Agent, and it's a newer thing you've released.
So our two big things are Route, which is on top of Shadow LLM, which I think is really cool because you don't have to deal with figuring out which LLM to use when. And it's just like a chat. You don't have to say, hey, I'm going to go use this or I'm going to use this pull down, nothing. So it just works seamlessly. But our next big product, which I really, really am super excited, is this general purpose agent called Deep Agent, right? What we mean by that is you can basically go to Deep Agent and ask it to do anything. You can ask it to connect to Notion and start integrating with Notion. You can ask it to, pull stuff from Jira. You can ask it to connect to Salesforce, get meetings. You can ask it to make presentations. You can ask it to create apps. You can ask it to create AI chatbots. Literally, it is like a general purpose AI agent, which does work for you. And I think something like that is going to be AGI in the future. There's no doubt about it, right? So it's kind of like you give it a prompt or you give it a task and the task needs to get done. And it doesn't matter what the task is. And it needs to have thousands of tools available to it though, right? If I say, hey, go put this in a database, I need to have a database. So Abacus needs to have a database tool, which we do, which is very, very cool because we have a code execution tool, like I mentioned, a database tool, and a way to host your websites. So it uses all of those tools and does the thing that you want. So then you don't have to worry about, I have to go buy something X to make my presentations, or I have to go buy some other subscription to make my podcast. Now you're, let's say, doing video editing. Now, I don't think we have the most fancy video editing tool yet, but maybe you're using an AI video editing tool, let's just say. And in the future, you'll want to just be able to drop this video and say, edit it, right? Ask the AI to edit it. And the AI should edit it because technically it's a general purpose agent and it should be able to edit it quite well. That is the goal behind Deep Agent. And it uses multiple LLMs to get the job done. Very similar to Route. It'll say, hey, first it'll build a plan and it'll say, this is the number of subtasks I have to create to get your job done. It can do up to 70, 80, 90 tasks, subtasks, based on your top level prompt. Each of those subtasks can be built by one or two LLMs. So the Deep Agent can go on for say 40 minutes to get your job, right? It can go research. It can then take that research, put it into an app. It can then create a database on that app. It can then create login. It can mix all of that together, put an AI chatbot on top of it, and give you a built out app with all of that information.
Do you have an example of a use case of Deep Agent from one of your customers or clients today, that a success story?
A success story. Yeah. So I think one of the most common examples that we see from people doing this, or two or three common examples are one, we see people actually creating custom domains, meaning they create an app, they like it so much that we see at least a few hundred custom domains being created, which host Abacus apps. So they're vibe coding these apps. They have no programming knowledge and they're creating these apps. A lot of them are creating these apps to make money in the sense that, they want to be able to say, hey, we have an AI agency. So here is a little AI agency app that we wrote up. We put that on a database and it works. Very recently, for example, somebody wrote up a fitness app, just to give you a very explicit example. They had an AI training trainer in the fitness app. So they built an AI training chatbot in it. They had a workbook associated with it. And they had like a bunch of training exercises. So it's a very deep fitness app built on Deep Agent. We run a competition for $2,500 every week now. We just started it and we're seeing a whole bunch of new stuff getting created. Here's another really classic example. Your marketing team, they need a one-pager PDF with a lot of infographics, with a lot of data in there. It creates really wonderful one-pager PDFs.
Where's the future of this going with agents? Like, what does the world look like when everyone's got an agent that can do stuff for them?
Yeah, I think the way this is going to morph is we're going to start with people now doing 90% of their work, which is kind of today, right? Let's say 10% is done by AI because maybe AI is writing a blog post, writing an email, whatever. Very soon, like by say the end of this year too, it'll actually be 20%. How? They're going to set up these agents, but they're going to set them up on some sort of a schedule. I get up in the morning and check my mail calendar. In that calendar, go see who do I have to meet. Send me a schedule of what I should do or what I should say. So every day morning, the agent will get up, send you this email as a classic example. So you will see a lot of these tasks automated by these agents. Say I have, operations team, right? The operations team actually deals with a bunch of stuff like PayPal payments. Sometimes we have to do refunds, all of that. Do you really need a human for that? Maybe not. They're able to, take some of that and automate that. So I feel like we're slowly going to start kind of delegating our work to AI agents that will be at both at the individual level and at the company level. So the individuals will be like, hey, I want to delegate this job that I'm doing. The company will be like, I usually hire 30 people to get this entire process done. I'm going to automate this entire process. And that will go from like 10% now to like 50% by the end of next year. And then I think there still is going to be the last 20%, which humans are going to stick to. And so even 3 years down the line, I feel like it'll be 80-20, 80 AI, 20 human.
You're very active on X and you post a lot. What role do you think that presence has in this world of AI and how important is that to you?
I don't necessarily post only about Abacus. I post about AI in general. So I feel like to me personally, it's very important because I feel like I have a lot of opinions, as is obvious, and thoughts. So I want to try to voice them, and I want to see how I can influence the AI community. I am very, very, very passionate about AI being decentralized, about AI being open source, and I think that won't happen. That will not happen for a fact if you don't have a lot of people fighting for it. We need a group of people who constantly, beat that drum, so to speak. And they aren't a lot, to be honest. We had Jan LeCun, and Jan's no longer there on X, right? So we have very, very few people now, unfortunately. There are a few Anon characters, but the minute you're Anon, you also change your mind based on what gets you more followers and so on and so forth. So you might be open source fan day one, like 10 days later, if you're going to use them for Google or them for OpenAI, maybe you get more followers, you move on, right? And so I think for me personally, it's really important, I think, for the world in general, actually, to have decentralized AI, to have open source AI. So therefore, I think that my presence on X matters to me because of that.
Why is it important that the world has open source AI?
The other approach is what you have with Apple, right now with the mobile monopoly. So basically, if you think about the internet, it is actually slowly dying. The reason why it's slowly dying is Steve Jobs pretty much single-handedly tried to kill it. Why did he try to kill it? Because he started the iPhone. And in that, he made a decision to really push the app platform, which is great for Apple, mind you. I mean, that's what he should be doing, right? Push the app platform of choice, which is the iOS app platform. And it charges you 30%. I mean, lately, just like 2 or 3 weeks ago, Fortnite won a case against them. And now I think Apple is forced to, not necessarily charge the 30%. But they made it happen first. And then Google just followed them, right? This fast followed them like they're doing now, fast following OpenAI. And so they fast followed them and they did the same thing. They said, hey, you also have to pay 15-20% fees, whatever the fees are now for Android. And even to date, this single moment right now, we don't live in a free world when it comes to a mobile app and the app economy. Every single little update of mine today to our mobile app has to go through Apple review, goes through Google review. 80% of what they say is utter garbage. The review is just utter garbage. Just be nice about it, meaning it doesn't make any sense. They ask you to change something. Then they, like 2 reviews later, like ask you to change it back. In addition to that, they take 30 to 40% of the fees. In addition to that, they have not let 1,000 flowers bloom, right? Like by monopolizing the entire mobile ecosystem, they've also made sure that the top 10 apps survive, the big apps. There's no click-through, there's no interlinking, there's no nothing. So in some sense, they've killed the internet. And we don't want to do that. The internet was great for millions of companies. There was this big, huge .com boom. That boom actually did not result in like 1 million different flowers blooming. It resulted in 6 companies which became $1 trillion companies, right? I don't think that's the world we want to live in. I think the employees of these companies don't want to be there too, if given a choice and given that independence. So I think we don't want that in AI. In AI, you will actually make it worse. You'll end up with 2 or 3 who will have monopolistic power. They can even stop you. For example, they can say, hey, the OpenAI policy today is not to like produce any AI images which are sexual in nature, which by the way, it is today. That is their policy. Now, I mean, that's fine. It's their private company. They can do whatever they want. But that just basically stops something, right? Now it's they're imposing their values on the rest of humanity. That's one of the smaller problems we'll have. There'll be a lot more.
How do you feel Elon Musk's approach to AI and with Grok? How is he doing?
My strong opinion is that Elon should stop working on Grok and start working on Tesla robots. I mean, unless he can do both. He's a person who's actually shown that he can do 2 things at the same time. The reason being that I think where the US is going to really fall behind is in robotics, right? Because China has the big advantage in manufacturing. They understand robotics. They're really good at AI. It's not like they're bad at AI. So they are ahead of us. Here, we don't have anybody. We just have Elon in some ways. He's the one who has the manufacturing prowess. And so if we don't actually level up, that's going to be bad. The Grok is he's really fighting with the software, white collar type automation with OpenAI and Claude and whatnot. And it's not important. I mean, somebody's going to figure it out. And in the very long run, in a decade, it's not very clear to me that we need that much white collar people even, or white collar automation, right? Why, it's like building software, which is being consumed by other people. What is the point of it all?
Mm-hmm.
I think in some sense it's not important to have one more player. So it's not clear. I think he's just upset about OpenAI, which is why he's pursuing Grok, but I don't think it's actually required.
What is the future vision for Abacus? Like you mentioned AGI, and what do you want this to be in 5 years for the customers?
So I think, while I said, hey, in 10 years from now, maybe we'll have very little white collar work, which I think is true if we succeed. I do think we want to be at the table, right? We're talking about people who are going to be automating a lot of this. All said and done, podcasts are going to stick around. What is going to stick around is human entertainment. I think you'll agree with this. And of course, a lot of the human entertainment will be by AI. AI will entertain us, but a lot will be human too. We might even value human for just being human. Then you will need AI to build those podcasts, build those videos or what have you. So I think of ourselves as being one of those general purpose agents, which actually plays well with the entire environment and helps with that decentralized world. We're small. We're never going to be a monopoly. We actually want Hedera to succeed. We want Ideogram to succeed. We want Kling to succeed. We want Quen to really do well. So, if we can enable that in any which way, even if it is what you would call a glorified wrapper with a lot of infrastructure, I'll take it.
From a global perspective and AI being able to help people in India, and you got millions and millions of people from lower economic statuses. How is AI going to lift people up? What's the rosy picture for AI globally?
I think it's already doing a really grand job. If you think about it right now, things like Upwork, which is actually one of the companies, like I said, I started in, are making a big difference, right? Globalization has really, really increased. If you look at Silicon Valley itself, a lot of us are have offices now in other places, whether that's in Eastern Europe or India. You see a lot of people in India, for example, the language barrier, it's taken it down. So AI is very good at actually helping you write emails, helping you translate. The large language models are fantastic in actually using your language as well as using English. So I think overall it's really surfaced hundreds of millions of people already into the global market. That's one thing. The second thing is it's actually freelancers are upskilling themselves more than anyone else in the world. If you go to Upwork today and post a project, right? the AI will respond to you in more cases than one, right? And then when you go actually have them, when you employ them and they don't know something, they're the first people who'll actually go to ChatGPT or Chat LLM or what have you and use it and like get the answer. So they adopt AI really, really quickly. And this means that everyone everywhere in the world can actually, participate in the global economy, and they're doing that very actively at the moment.
Yeah, I work with a lot of freelancers, and the access to internet and predicates access to AI. And what predicates access to internet is access to electricity. And AI requires a lot of electricity. And some of these countries have problems with that. And I wonder, where do you see the energy use of AI going? Some people are saying that it's just going to be as cheaper than anything. AI is going to be essentially free in the future. I'm curious your thoughts on energy.
Yeah. So, will LLMs become cheaper? I hope so, and I think they will. But will we have a lot of energy, or will we have enough energy for the world to have the entire world run on AI? I think that's the hard part, right? You're seeing people already kind of sort of freak out a little bit. We need a lot of energy. We need a lot of ways of getting it. Of course, there are different schools of thought here. The simplest one, of course, is, hey, let's just make sure that the energy that we have in terms of our resources, in terms of oil, etc., we actually use pretty smartly. That's kind of current thinking, right? Let's just make sure at least the US is very energy independent. Having said that, we have to solve energy anyway. We have a problem with climate change. There's no two ways about it. We have a problem with climate change. We have a problem with needing almost infinite energy. So the two answers have so far been solar, which is what Elon pushes all the time, right? Which may be the answer, but we still need to have breakthroughs to get there. And then the second one is fission, which is a little bit more longer term, which we don't really know because we need big breakthroughs there. That seems more like a decade away. But I feel like the other hope that we have is as AI becomes smarter and smarter, maybe it'll help us get these breakthroughs done. So I do think that we'll have breakthroughs in energy in the order of 10 to 15 years. If we get to near infinite energy, meaning we don't think of it on an ongoing basis, it's always available. Maybe we've harnessed the power of the sun. Maybe we've got fission going. Then it's, everything becomes more freer. And then we have that age of abundance that everybody is hoping we'll get to.
What are you worried about with AI? Where can this go wrong? It's happening so quickly. It's hard to see where it's going. And a lot of people don't even pay attention to it. But it's happening so fast, and there's a lot of things to worry about, I fear. What are you worried about?
I think three things. The first and the foremost is monopoly. I think that there is a very big risk, and that's a huge risk. I think people don't understand how big the risk is. Mobile is nothing compared to the risk of 2 or 3 companies controlling AI. So that's one thing, the first thing. Second thing, I am very worried about China, not because I don't like the Chinese people. I love them. I think they're brilliant, but I do think they have a very authoritarian government. So we don't want them in some way, controlling AI or having a lot more power than the free world. So I am really worried about that. And I also don't want the US to fall behind. Like it or not, for whatever reason, I'm a big fan of America. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, there is a little bit of safety risk with AI, which I think we'll manage, to be honest. I do think it's not completely hey, there's no chance that AI can hurt us or whatnot. That's not true. There is some chance. I think, for example, even in the really short term, right now term, if you make an AI agent, which is really powerful, and it somehow gets root on your machine, right? It's sitting on some cluster, figures out how to break it, how to get root. It can delete your data. It can. For example, right, we deal with these security problems every day. It's creating a database. If it's creating your database, it might actually delete some other user's database, right? So there is that security risk, but I think it's not that high. It's not that bad. We can figure it out. Open source will help a lot. There are a lot of ways to, contain it. I think the other two risks are much higher.
AI and jobs and the displacement that is going to happen. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think, AI has two effects, right? Kind of counter to each other. One is it is actually giving a lot of people who don't have jobs, meaning people who could do just say Java. I'll give you a very good example. I actually hired a developer today and for a contract piece of work that we needed done, which is very specialized, very specific. That person needed to know a lot about Azure and Entra ID and Active Directory. He's an expert at that. But he also needs to know Python a little bit. And then he's, I think, going to use AI for it, which is fine. And I think it'll actually help the job market in that way. So it actually up-levels people. So that's really helpful in the short term. I also think you will lose jobs. There is no doubt about it, right? You can't say, hey, I'm a support person somewhere and that's all I'm going to do. Or I'm a driver too. I'm a Uber driver. I don't know how long that lasts. So I do think people will eventually end up losing their jobs. But I do think it'll happen in a way where it happens together, meaning that a lot of people will start losing jobs and we will end up with some kind of like a cushion or a UBI type process where people eventually can make a choice. Hey, I really want to do this job. I'm really good at this. This is not what the AI can do. That's great. Maybe I don't want to do something. I do have like some basic services that, that the government will provide for me. But I can also like hippie traveling one place to another, which is really cool to do too, right? If you can afford to do it in some ways. So I think over time, over the next 10, 15 years, we will figure out some form of UBI alongside people still owning property and still having capitalism and still kind of like gambling with crypto. So it's going to be an interesting time, but I don't think it'll be terrible.
So you're a very successful woman in a man-dominated space. What's your advice for women in the tech industry or trying to get into the tech industry?
I think the main thing is actually not worry too much that you're a woman. That's actually very counterintuitive, but that is the right answer. I feel like, I've met a lot of women who are exceptionally smart. In fact, I've seen some of the biggest outliers be women. So I think be confident about that. Like, the fact that you are not in some way inferior to the guys. So not obsess about your gender, but also be very confident about yourself. And in the end of the day, it's like, think about what impact you're having. Don't think too much about like, oh, look, this person is being misogynistic or whatever. There are lots of people who are also not misogynistic, right? Who are going to help you. So it's a double-edged sword. People are like, okay, there's so many times when I've been called to speak or do something because I'm a woman, to be honest. And I'm not going to take it personally. I'm not going to be like, oh no. It's both an opportunity and sometimes like, it works against you. But I think you should like take advantage when you can.
What would you say is your guiding principle as a CEO? You're a CEO of a 150-person company. It's a big organization. What are your guiding principles?
It's evolved, especially because AI is evolving so much. So right now, I'm really a big fan of like people, who apply AI in their job and 10x themselves. And I'm finding that you don't have to be credentialed for that. Like we used to, hire people only from top universities, top schools, blah, 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 that sort of thing. And now we're just much more kind of like, hey, we just want to hire people who want to get work done, but who can also leverage AI. We've seen people 10x themselves. Our other like big principle is we usually let people be as autonomous as possible because I think that's the future. I almost think that there are going to be a lot of one-person companies, right? Or even like 10-person companies, which are very successful. So if I have to have a 150-person company, then it should be as good as having 10-person companies, right? And so the only way you do that is actually give each team their autonomy, give them a lot of like decision-making power, give them a lot of AI tools, and see how they can 10x themselves and the team. See how you can actually create these kinds of, I would almost say, AI-powered teams who can make decisions on their own.
Amazing, Bindu. This has been really interesting. I really admire your leadership in this space and your thoughts and being so openly opinionated and not afraid to share your opinion. So where can people find you? You're big on X, LinkedIn, and it's Abacus.AI, right?
Just find me. Bindu Reddy is my name. You'll find, Google me. I think my X account shows up. I'm actually I spend a lot of time there. I also respond to people, especially if they have interesting comments. And of course, would love for everybody to join the open source decentralized AI revolution. And I'm sure like there's going to be a lot of like startups that imagine AI. And I actually wish them really well. I do think the only way to break the monopoly is to have a ton of successful startups.
That's a great note to end on. Bindu Reddy, thank you so much for joining the Imagine AI Live podcast and hope to talk to you again.
Thank you. And thanks for taking the time. Yeah. Bye.